Kal Kadosh Boker Or. This is Mishnah Yomi, Perek Gimel of Masechet Bava Kamma, the third chapter, Mishnah Tet and Yod, 9 and 10. The Mishnah Tet starts as follows. When you have a shor shaveh maneh shenagach shor shaveh matayim. We're talking about, again, differences of different calculations. When you have about a tam, when he damages, so how much does he have to pay and what is he paying? When you have a shor, which is an ox, which is equal to a maneh. A maneh is 100 zuz. That gores a shor, which is worth 200 zuz. Ve'ena nevela yafa klum. Now, the carcass is worth nothing. So basically, it's a write-off. It's like a total loss, right? Everything goes out to the... So what happens? Notelat shor. So basically, what happens is that since the shor that did the damage was worth 100, and it's a tam, and it damaged one of 200, so he has to pay only chetzi nezik, which is 100. So the guy just takes the shor, meaning that instead of taking money, he comes and he just takes the shor. Okay, fine. So, and now, this is what's very interesting, is that the Torah actually says, which means you're going to sell the living animal, and then they're going to divide the money. So says, shor shaveh matayim shenagach shor shaveh matayim. How he says, the Rabbi Meir, right? He says when you have a shor which is worth 200, that gores a shor which is worth 200, and now the carcass is worth nothing. Amar Rabbi Meir says, Rabbi Meir, on this is a pasuk where it says, because basically since a damager owes 100, so they have to sell the living damager shore, meaning the shore that damaged, which is worth 200, and they have to chatzu et kaspo. They have to divide the money because he killed. It was 200 for 200. Remember that he only has to pay 100 because it's a tam. So therefore, the one that which died, which is worth 200, the carcass is worth nothing. So therefore, it's completely write off. So now you have the living one. He only has to pay 100, but the shor is worth 200. So says Rabbi Meir, that's what the pasuk says. Umacheru et hashor achai. You have to sell the living animal, and then they chatzu et kaspo. They're going to divide the money in between them. Says Rabbi Yehuda, Amar lo Rabbi Yehuda, says Rabbi Yehuda to Rabbi Meir, Dechen halacha. That is a halacha. Meaning, nobody will argue that is 100% halacha. But in the pasuk, it doesn't make sense. Because you fulfilled the pasuk where it says that you sold the living animal and you divide the money. But you did not mekayem the pasuk that says you have to divide the dead animal as well. Because you said that the dead animal was a write-off. So if the dead animal was a write-off, so how do you get the end of the pasuk? The end of the pasuk was you have to divide the deceased animal as well. So he says, so what's the explanation of the pasuk then? Shor shaveh matayim. It's a shor which is worth 200. Shenagach shor shaveh matayim, which scores another shor which is shaveh matayim. V'anivela yafeh chamishim, but the carcass is worth 50. So now what happens is as follows. If the carcass is worth 50, how much was the real loss? So he had a living ox worth 200, and now that it's killed, it's only worth 50. So the loss was only 150. Okay, so if the loss is 150, how much does the guy have to pay? Half. Chetzi nezek. So he has to pay 75. So therefore it says like this. The damager is going to take half of the living one, which is 100, and half of the carcass, which is 25, which is a total of 125. Another one is also going to take half of the living animal and half of the deceased animal. So it's also going to be 125. So therefore he comes up and he says the victim's 125 zuz is equivalent to half of the loss, which is 75 zuz, together with the entire value of the carcass, which was his anyway, and therefore he's been paid for half of his loss. So therefore the same arrangement can be made. He says if two oxen are worth the same, right, the value of the carcass is relevant. But again, this is just a different way of how to explain the pasuk. That was Mishnah Tet. We're now going to go to Mishnah Yod. Mishnah Yod is talking about now a person's liability for damage done by his animal, right, for done by himself. What's the differences between them? So, says the Mishnah 10, Yesh chayav al maaseh shoro patur maaseh atzmo. Sometimes it's going to happen that you would be obligated on your ox's actions and exempt on your own. Patur Maaseh Sharo, sometimes you're going to be exempt on your ox's actions. V'chayav Maaseh one, you're obligated on your own actions. So now let's explain, what does that mean? Shoro Shabiesh, when you have your animal that embarrasses, Patur, he doesn't have to pay anything, because he'll never pay for anything. Okay? Vehu Shabiesh, and he who's going to embarrass, he's going to be chayav, because a human being that embarrasses is chayav for embarrassment. When a person's ox damages his slave's eye, or he knocked out the tooth, patur, he's not obligated to free the slave. Right? Why? It wasn't him, it was his ox. But if it was he himself that blinded his own slave, Evid Kanani, or he took out his tooth, he's going to be chayav. If his own ox damages the father and the mother, he's going to be chayav, because he has to pay the damages. But if he himself does, he's going to be patur. Why? Because then he gets a death penalty, and he doesn't have to pay whatsoever, because once he gets a death penalty, he doesn't have to pay. If one's ox set fire to the stack of grain on Shabbat, he's going to be chayav. But if he's going to come and set fire to the stack of grain on Shabbat, he's going to be patur. Why? Because he's liable, right, for losing his life, because he desecrated the Shabbat.